All right, guys, with respect for those of you that logged in on time, I think we'll kick off the webinar today. Few housekeeping rules for starting. The webinar will be recorded, as I mentioned before, which means that everybody will receive this recorded version afterwards. So feel free to distribute it to anybody in your organization, or spend Christmas watching it once again if you find it that interesting. Or else naturally just store it somewhere where you can always come back to it. So another few things: in your webinar app you have the option of asking questions, which means that fire away, and please do so while we're in the webinar. We'll try to take questions as we go along where it fits in. We have just about 45 minutes together, so we have quite some grounds to cover today. So fire questions away, and we'll see if we can answer them as we go along. So a little bit of introduction. First of all, myself. My name is Lasse. I am a partner and owner of the company called Increase. And today we'll be speaking about customer experience, customer journey mapping, and how we can bring that from a very interesting framework and a model of how to go about this into actual flows, actual communications towards the customers. And I'm going to show you a few interesting examples, one from a B2C client of ours, Danske Spil, and another one from a major B2B client of ours, which is a major IT reseller that has just started out their journey on the customer experience. So we'll try to do a little bit of a framework theory on how to go about this, and then bring it into the process and into some actual examples. So I hope that kind of fits your expectations. If you were expecting, how to build the best lasagna or something like that, then you're definitely in the wrong webinar. Also, just a very short introduction to ourselves for those of you that haven't been on our webinar before. Increase, we're about 32 people and work all of the Nordics. We've specialized ourselves in the Oracle Marketing Cloud, built on the Eloqua platform back when they purchased Eloqua back in 2011, 12, something like that. We were sort of fortunate to win the Specialized Partner of the Year once again from Oracle. And we are, in general, the biggest Oracle Marketing Cloud partner in the Nordics. Naturally, we work with a ton of different customers, so I have to have a slide like this to show you that there are more than just myself in this company. And today, as I mentioned, we'll show you an example of Danske Spil and also one of our other B2B clients. So if you want to know more about us, please go into one of our local websites or our corporate site, increasegroup.com, or SE or NO, or the Danish side. We have a blog where we update quite a number of articles as we go along, once every week, every second week approximately, taking up elements around automation, communication, personalization, all these great things. So just to set the scene for today, nurturing of customers through the full customer journey. And I think we wanted to try to set the scene on why we're seeing this being really relevant. And for those of you that know me, I am definitely not a fisherman, but I think the analogy of going fishing actually fits pretty well with what we're trying to do with lead nurturing and lead generation in general, and some of the discussions we've had with Isabel from SiriusDecisions, that's also here today, in the earlier webinars that we've conducted during the last 2 to 3 months. Because if we think about fishing and generating new customers, we kind of set up, all of us, to really capture the big chunk of new customers, going out there, finding customers, new customers, cross-selling, upselling, and all of these nice things, running massive campaigns, cross-channel, buying medias, and all of these different things. But when you think about it, then often doesn't campaigns end up with this nice little fish instead? And it's not on purpose that we're taking this specific picture, but if you look at the face of that fish, it looks a little bit tired of being caught. So I think when we think about lead nurturing and lead capturing, what we really want to try to do is to set up a net, really to continuously capture the fish, the big customers that comes by in the markets that we fish in. And that is really what we're trying to do by setting up automated communication flows, automated communication programs that supports the customer throughout the full customer journey. And that's what we'll be discussing today. How can we define that big fish net to ensure that we capture all of the fish that goes by, the customers that go by? Now what's the framework for addressing that really, and how can we bring that into to something that can be executed not only on short term, but also we can build on for the long term? So what we see that a lot of our customers is actually trying to do is to set the full vision, the full omni-channel. This is how we will be communicating to our customers, but often get stuck in a situation where it is a massive communication flow that needs to be set up, massive frameworks and massive touch point for the customer throughout the full life cycle. And often these kind of programs ends up in a complexity where the first low-hanging fruit doesn't really get executed because the full vision is so far away. So what we'll do today is really to show you a framework, like I said before, from SiriusDecisions on how to identify journeys, customer journeys, which elements that is important to investigate in the design phase of this. And then we'll also show you how can we bring this into the basics. How can we identify the parts of the customer journey that brings the highest business value with the least resource use, the least complexity, and start out with all the ones that we would call A1s or B1s and C1s, etc. And then evolve and build from there. And that's really what we want to do in this webinar today. And as I mentioned earlier on, we'll also show you a couple of concrete examples from customers that's been working with this for quite some time, in this case Danske Spil, and also a B2B client, which has a massive e-shop, biggest e-shop in the Nordics, and they have just started their customer journey mapping, but have started out with the full vision and now are bringing that into to minor parts of the customer journey flow. So with that said, once again, Isabel, I am so pleased to have you. We've done 3 webinars together now, and this is the last one. Should we call this the Christmas present for our viewers today? The crown of what you will be communicating. So I hope you can hear me, Isabel, and you can give a short introduction for the ones that are on this webinar that haven't met you before.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and hopefully you can all hear me as well. And see my screen. I think with the 4th in the series, I'm sure we have saved the best for last. So it's a pleasure to speak with you all this afternoon, especially on a topic as near and dear to my heart as the B2B buyer's journey. I think, as Lasse was very eloquently explaining, I think over time we've all come to the realization that we can have the best products in the world, and we can go about trying to sell them or catch those fish in the market. But unless we know something about those fish, or in this case our prospects, and how they want to buy, what their problems are, and how to really relate our solutions to their needs, then we're going to have limited amounts of success and perhaps just keep catching that very small fish. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is what we call the B2B buyer's journey, and how we've encapsulated it into 3 major stages, and then how you can use that framework in order to help you really tailor your approach to the market and catch more fish. So let's start with the actual SiriusDecisions buying cycle, and I'm going to take you through this stage by stage, starting with what we call the first stage, which is all about education. And I mean, really, the prevailing emotion of any prospect, or of any of us, unless they're really sort of a forward thinker and an early adopter, is to keep plodding along with things the way they are, right? As long as they're sort of working, we kind of keep doing the same things that we've been used to doing. In order to really change a prospect, to make them move on from just doing things the way they've always done, the status quo, a prospect really has to have developed enough curiosity or information about what the potential alternatives are. And that really begins with significant amounts of education by the prospect. And so we, as vendors, really need to help them by providing some of that, so that we can make that curiosity blossom, if you like, so that they can go on to the second stage, which is all about committing to change. And here, many deals stall here because the prospect likes an idea. They were intrigued by something that they read in terms of educational information. They were intrigued by the theory, but they don't really have enough pain to believe that the solution is actually needed. So cool, but you know what? I've got more important things burning that I need to go do. So what you really want to do as a vendor in this stage is really sort of help the prospect or provide the prospect with enough evidence to believe that something actually needs to be done about the problem. And so it's really important to note, if you're thinking, well, maybe it's not that important, 75% or more of prospects who make it through this phase will actually buy some sort of solution. Now, the question later on, of course, is what will they buy and from whom? But that statistics is helping you understand how important it is at this early education phase to convince someone that the pain that they're experiencing is worth solving. Let's go on to the second major phase, which is all about solution. And in this phase, this is where you could say the active buying begins. So in the first part, they're exploring possible solutions. So prospects are really going to begin to scope out, what they would like their solution to achieve, how they want to solve those pain points. And then they're probably going to launch into a process of trying to become more educated about the different types of solution categories and even the different types of vendors and what they're saying about, how their solution is better than someone else's. And then we go into committing to a solution. And here the prospect and quite possibly the rest of the buying team that prospect is working with to make this decision and drive and influence the process are going to be assessing the different multiple vendors and trying to select one type of category. And so if there's likely to be some type of formal process, maybe it's an RFP, then that would likely happen around here. And then we enter the third major phase, which is the vendor selection. And so in the first bit, which is justifying the decision, there's a couple of things going on. The first is different vendor categories and vendors themselves are starting to be ruled out at this stage. The other thing that's happening at this stage is that the champion or the person leading the whole buying process for the company is actually justifying internally why this is the right thing to do, why spending money here is better than spending money someplace else, and why this particular vendor and this solution category are the right ones for the business. And then as we go into the very last stage within vendor selection, actually making the selection, here the buying cycle is winding down with a final phase that probably includes negotiating contracts and terms, maybe defining rollout plans, but anything that is going to address the actual details of what's going to happen after the purchase is made. And it's an important stage because I think we all forget something that in my last company we used to call 11th hour jitters, right? So just before you're about to sign that deal, then the prospect usually has some moment of doubt. And it's important at that particular stage to make sure that you're providing them with some kind of reassurance that buying this solution and buying it from you is the right thing to do. And there's a number of ways that you can do that, and we'll see that in the next section. Now, I love the simplicity of this particular model and how straight and wonderful it looks, but there are a number of things that actually affect this particular buyer's journey. And probably one of the main ones is this, which we call a demand type. Now, what it really is about is it's about the type of offering that you're taking to the market. So let me just explain these three demand type definitions very, very quickly, and then I'll tell you how it affects the buying cycle. So if we start with new concept, really, new concept is about a problem that's unknown. So the prospect doesn't know that they have this problem, doesn't even know that they could, hope to do things, totally differently or solve a problem in a completely different way. And, you can think of examples such as perhaps smartphones before they became, everybody's best friend, or perhaps, maybe even some of the new smart meters that are getting stronger and stronger as an industry. Perhaps that's still considered a new concept in some markets. But really, this is a disruptive product or service. It typically, within that prospect's company, has no budgetary line item. So there's no money set aside to buy this category of solution. And new concept marketing as a result and selling needs to be very evangelistic and really requires significant ability on the part of marketing and sales to help uncover the issues, right? And then, use influence to try and motivate prospects to realize that this is a problem that they could solve and that it would be highly beneficial. So the key requirement here is quite a lot of market leadership. If we go on to the second demand type, which is new paradigm, here the problem or problems, because it could be more than one, are known, but you're offering an entirely new solution category. So you're offering a product or a service that really promises to retool or optimize an existing process or solve, as I said, a known issue much more effectively than before was believed possible. So the replacement, or at least maybe adding on to the current solution of a product or service, is really where you're going to be focusing here. So the key requirement for you as a vendor is to talk about process change or solution change and help people understand how that's going to benefit them. And then the third one, which is established market, here it's a product or a service that is accepted by the majority of target prospects. And there's probably a handful of best-of-breed vendors. And so here the real key requirement is trying to explain to the prospect why your offering is better, more competitive than someone else. And that could be perhaps on price, on features, maybe on add-on services, maybe it's on the entire customer lifecycle management. But those are the three different types of offerings that you may be taking to the market. And depending on which of those three you're trying to break into the market with, that's going to have an impact on the buying cycle that we saw. And so if it's a brand new concept, there's going to be a significant amount of time spent in that very first stage under education, really helping to create materials that you can share with prospects or make available to prospects on the internet so that they can start that process of educating themselves and really, get through that loosening the status quo and believing that they should commit to this change. If, on the other hand, it's a new paradigm, so the problem or problems are known, and maybe there's a solution, but you have an entirely new solution type, then the likelihood is there's going to be some information already out there on the internet or perhaps through peers that are about the problems and the pains they face, so you'll probably spend less time and effort in the education phase and really want to focus more of your budget and time on the solution phase, on helping explain to prospects why your solution is so new and innovative and can really help them solve their problem in a number of different new ways. And last but not least, if you're in an established market where the problem is known and the solutions are known, then it's likely that there's quite a lot of information already out there or information they can get from their peers about the pains that your problem solves, about the types of solution categories that are available to them. So you're likely to spend most of your budget and time really trying to focus on how you are better or different than the other competitors, and likely to spend most of your time in that vendor selection phase. So that's one example of this buying cycle and how you can use it to really understand the process that your buyers are going through and also overlay onto it the actual product that you're going to market with to know where to really focus your time and your energy. Now, once you have this particular framework, it's great, but how is it helping you actually create the right messaging and the right pitch? Well, that's where we go next. So let's talk about each one of these stages, and then let's make a leap to say, what do we need to be providing to the prospect at each one of these stages in order to help them make the decision to continue this buying cycle with us? And we're going to do that by looking at the value statements that I would suggest you think about for each one of these steps. So looking at the education stage, right, where again we started out with providing information, right, that is going to help loosen the status quo. Here, what you need to be thinking about as you craft your message is to inform the prospect, really connect that particular prospect with the business issue. So you could be providing a vision of the future, maybe it's through an organizational structure or through skills or tools, and the ability to compare the current state that they're in, the status quo, against that future state or what you're going to be terming as best practice. in committing to change, really here what you want to do is you want to trigger them. The messages that you need to provide are about triggering them into action. So you want to pinpoint the idea or the concept that's going to persuade that prospect to take action. So perhaps it could be insight on performance optimization or an understanding of how much and what kind of change is actually required in order for them to stay, ahead in their particular industry. That could be one example. As we move on to the solution phase, under exploring possible solutions here, what you really want to communicate is the benefit. You want to explain how your solution can meet that prospect's needs or solve a problem. So here what you're trying to do is create in them a detailed understanding of the change implications and validate that a purchase is absolutely required to achieve their objectives. And then under committing to a solution, here you want to start to differentiate. You want to illustrate how your solution is unique from all the other alternatives. So it could be a collection of standard features and benefits available within the category. It could be creation of an evaluation shortlist. It could even be an evaluation of potential ways and how yours stacks up against that. Those are all different ways that you could differentiate. And then last, as we enter that vendor selection phase, you want to start under justifying the decision of providing some support for that business case. Remember, they're not just picking a vendor, they're also justifying internal to the company why this is the right thing to spend money on at this point in time. So perhaps some sort of offer investment rationale for the person's decision criteria, and really sort of providing that understanding of why you're going to be the best partner for them in terms of functionality and relationship to the organization. And then last but not least, for making the selection, you really want to, as I said, confirm their choice so that they don't get those 11th hour jitters. Reinforce why you are the best partner, perhaps through validation from an existing customer, so a customer reference, perhaps in providing some kind of vision or feeling of what it's going to be like when and after they become a customer. Now, once you have all of that information, how do you connect that? Well, here on the right-hand side, you can see me starting to map through the types of content pieces that would be important for you to create at each step of this buying cycle. Under the first one for education, here we're talking about thought leadership. So think about creating content that really helps you position yourself as a thought leader and talks about solution categories at a high level. As we go to the solution phase, now you want to start thinking about creating content that's really providing a value story and starting to differentiate your solution from others. And then once you enter that vendor selection phase, here you want to start creating content that's providing that financial justification and that decision validation. And if I'm going to map all that out so we can finish the actual story, let's actually start providing you with some examples of what I mean by each. And I've done this, as you can see towards the bottom of the slide, in two areas. One is I've broken out the concept of an asset, which to me is the actual content piece, and the delivery mechanism, which is how you are going to share that particular content with your target prospect. And it's important, I think, that we make sure we have the right combination of these two for each of these different sections. So under education and thought leadership here, you can perhaps have a white paper that's delivered through your website, a blog post on a blog site, or a presentation that you're delivering through a webinar. For committing to change, where we're talking about solution category and knowledge, perhaps you want to provide an infographic, right, that you're delivering through a social community post, or a presentation that maybe you deliver at a paid event, or a script that you're sharing with your sales force so that they can also ensure that they're speaking about this particular offering using consistent language. Under exploring possible solutions and trying to share that value story, perhaps, again, this could be a different white paper, but now one that you're offering over email. A presentation that you're doing through one of your own, perhaps a prospect or customer events, or even a telescript that you're sharing with your telemarketing function. And when we talk about solution differentiation to help people commit to a particular solution, again, it could be a different white paper that you're making available through your website, a different blog post, or a one-pager that you're sharing either through email or actually providing to your sales force and allowing them to share it with prospects. Entering that last phase under vendor selection, here when we start talking about financial justification, right, perhaps it's an ROI calculator, and that could be made available through your website. Or another one-pager where, again, maybe you're emailing that, or even some very hands-on business case type of templates that your sales force is going to be providing to the prospect. And then last but not least, under decision validation, as I said, maybe it's a customer reference that you're creating. It could be a call, it could be an actual piece of content, and maybe that's something the sales force actually shares. Or it could be a roadmap about what it's going to be like to be one of your customers, and that could be part of a presentation during an executive briefing. Or it could be a champion kit, a presentation kit that you put together that you share with the champion within that prospect's business, and they use it to put their presentation together to the board. All of these are different examples that show how you can map the message as well as the content as well as the delivery mechanism to each stage of the buying process, helping you really speak to them in their own language and convince them that this is the right purchase to make. Now, one last thought that I will leave you with, which is, as you select the content and the different delivery mechanisms, or what I call together the different tactics, it's important to remember how that prospect wants to be spoken to. And as in a recent study that we did earlier this year, what we found is there's almost a 50-50 split between how prospects want to interact with us. On the one hand, there's all of what we call the non-human conduits. And so perhaps it's a website, something online, or perhaps a brochure they pick up that they can sort of read in their own time that doesn't require any kind of dialogue or interaction with anyone else. That's the non-human side. And then there's the human side, which is some kind of active interaction with another person. That could be through email. It could be through some kind of webinar or event. It could even be through some type of chat facility. And so that's the other, almost 50%. And I think as we think about digital, we've traditionally thought about digital playing a role in that non-human category. But in the examples that I've just used, you can tell that actually digital is something that can support both sides, both the non-human side and the human side. It could be a website, right, or it could be a chat, or it could even be something like a webinar where we're speaking now, which is obviously supported by digital. So hopefully that's helped provide you with an overview of that buying cycle, helped you really sort of understand some of the things that you can do to bring that knowledge and tailor your marketing and sales approach to that buying cycle. And I'll just leave you with these actions, which is I encourage you to go ahead and map and understand your specific buyer's journey, and then really try and align that messaging to each phase. And it could help as well to conduct content audits so that you understand for all the existing pieces of content that you might have, how they could map to that picture that I shared with you and any gaps that you might have. And that'll help direct investment specifically to create assets that are 100% in line with the buying process. Thank you, Lasse. I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. So, guys, I hope you got a good introduction to a thought process and also sort of a process on how we can identify the customer's journey. But I think one of the things that we experience ourselves with many of the customers that we meet as we go along is the difficulties of taking this from PowerPoint slides, from structures and those sort of things into actual flows and actual communications. And for that sake, I'm going to try to give you two examples of customers we've worked with and show you what they ended up with. And what we try to advise our customers to do is really to start small but think big. So one of those I'll show you today is a Danske Spil, a company that's been working with customer lifecycle communication and dialogue-based communication for many years now. They execute more than, I think 2015 is going to be around 2,000 campaigns. Now they have a lot of data available today. They have 12 different brands, and they do a ton of trigger communication, lifecycle flows, personalization, and really using the Eloqua automation platform from Oracle to the full extent in different channels, and using that to really personalize and communicate. I'm going to give you another example of a B2B client of ours that has just started the customer lifecycle journey and identifying the different maps. I'll also end up showing you a process of how that is being addressed. See, I have a question here. I just want to check if it's something that should be. Okay, I have a few questions that has come up along the way. If the slides will be available afterwards, and yes, they will. As I mentioned in the beginning, it is a recorded session, which means that you will get the slides afterwards, also with Isabel and my own nice voice along the way. So let's try to jump into to the life cycle of Danske Spil. Now, bear with me; it's a Danske Spil slide that we've actually been allowed to use. There's a little bit of Danish in this, so I know we have some Swedish and Norwegian and Finnish contacts on the webinar also. So I hope you can bear with us on that. So first of all, Danske Spil has identified the main stages that a customer actually goes through. So from a lead management stage, where it's really about getting people to submit a form and identifying what our customers or these potential prospects actually registering for. The second phase is what's called get started, which is the first time you actually log in and register yourself as a customer at Danske Spil. I'm going to go through the phases in a little bit details in just a second. The third phase is the first time, the first period as a customer. So you've registered yourself and you've done a number of things, but you've just started playing the first games and having fun with Danske Spil. Then you enter the active customer and you become an inactive customer, and there's also a win-back flow in the end. So try to give you a view of how they've gone about this is they've identified, based on simple data, have you registered yet? Which means, do you have a customer ID or have you not? If you don't have a customer ID, well, you belong into the lead management phase. They run a ton of recruitment campaigns where they offer a lot of different things to get you to register and submit a permission. Now, the first thing that happens is people actually submit a form and they end up in a flow, and I'm going to try to show you right now. So it's called the data harvest flow. Now, this is a screenshot inside of Eloqua where they feed contacts in from different forms. Anytime you get you register at Danske Spil, then you get into a communication process where different triggers would actually be sent out, and they're monitoring whether you have a customer ID or not, right? So the first email that would be sent out is an email that invites you to give more information. Now, they have a fantastic product because they can offer prices, cool cash, to actually submit extra information. So they start to ask people around the gaming behavior. Are you a mathematical player, or are you a player that just going to gamble for fun and have a nice time with your wife and friends, etc.? Are you somebody that is gambling based on luck? Because they have different sorts of games actually. So once you've submitted that, you go through the different flows here, and you end up with a profile inside of Eloqua. Now, the flow actually continues, and there's a number of trigger campaigns that is also being set up, that has been set up. So, for instance, if you visit the casino pages but have not yet played the casino games, well, you automatically enter into a campaign offering you a get started bonus on casino, etc. So once you've converted and you've registered on the Danske Spil account, well, you end up in a welcome communication, which is a mail flow that has a number of different communication and touch points. But you can actually start to be a customer at Danske Spil before you activate your account. So if you have not activated your account, you will end up in this flow. So if you have activated your account, but maybe you have still not transferred money into your account. So if you have not transferred money into the account yet, well, you can't play your first game. So you will be in a flow of communications that reminds you of to transfer money, and this is how you do it, etc. Right? And then you might have transferred money, which means that your account balance is above 0, but you have not yet played your first game. So introductions to different game types is being sent out. So once you've once you've played your first game, then you go to the next phase, which is the first period as a customer. And to give you a real live example of this, so this is a flow that's been set up see, this is Lifecycle 1A, a number of touch points informing the customer around the different parts of that specific communication. Now, an example of that is if you haven't activated your account, this is how you do that. Click here to activate. Reminders being sent out. Now, that's pretty simple, straightforward, but it has a huge impact because it really gives the customers a good introduction to this specific part of Danske Spil's progress. Now the flow continues. So there's the first period as a customer. So this is how you modify your account. You can set limits on how much you can use, a month, a day, etc. There's a ton of services that Danske Spil offers. There's a customer service, and there's a mobile apps you can download, and then there's the introduction of all of the different games. They have 12 different brands that you can actually use, anything from bingo to lotto to oddset, etc. Right? And then once you've gone through that period, that's the first 30 days, then you enter into the phase of an active customer. Now, based on your gaming behavior, you've played mainly oddset maybe. Then you become a primary oddset customer, which means that you will receive primarily information around the games that you have played and etc. Which also gives them a fantastic opportunity to now to do cross-sell and upsell. So maybe you've played oddset, but have you tried lotto and all of those different things. So they're running a ton of different communications in this phase. They have about 1.6 million contacts in Alico today, and they also run a lot of trigger communications. So if you visit the oddset pages but have not played oddset before, you enter into an introduction campaign and those sort of things. Furthermore, they also have flows running, which is monitoring inactivity. So if you haven't logged in for X period, then you also receive re-engagement activities. And if you've been inactive for 365 days, there's a mail flow also supporting that. Now, as you can hear, a lot of this stuff is actually run by mails, but they also have other channels of SMS and offline and in-app communication and those sort of different things. But in the starting point, if you think about the overall flow, it's really about identifying the key phases that the customer go through, and then build that into the structures below. And it doesn't have to be everything in one day. And that's really what we try to advise our customers to, because often we see customers designing the full customer life cycle and the huge omni-channel with customer journey mapping sessions with 6,000 yellow post-its on the wall, and not really able to get started. And it might actually just be, if you have an e-shop, it might actually just be setting up the first introduction campaign. The first time a customer registers, we want to send him a good introduction and a thank you for becoming a customer and all of those different things. It doesn't have to be a complex communication from day one. So the way we go about this, and I'll show you the other case in just an example, in just a second. So the way we go about this is really having a set of fairly simple tools where we start out with identifying the different phases. Now, this is just an example data. We identify the different phases. We describe each phase high level. The goal for each phase is set. So we have an identification of the phase, which means that in the create awareness, it might be unknown contacts or somebody that has created something within the last period. We identify what makes me move from one phase to the other, and then we identify the marketing tactics or the flows that are relevant for that specific phase. And the rest of this spreadsheet below here actually identifies the data needs that is needed to support that specific phase. And then it's getting out there and implementing it. So it really starts out with a high-level flow, like the one you saw before. I'm going to show you this one is from the B2B client in just a second. Bringing that down from this level into specific communication flows, and then implementing that into the technology. So moving it from PowerPoints into to actual communications. And to give you an example of how this sort of flows could look like from an e-shop perspective. Now, this is a very large IT reseller in the Nordics that we're just in the process of implementing. Everything has been designed and actually set up in Alico also. Content is in the process of being created. Now, think about it, an e-shop customer lifecycle in a B2B segment, right? So we have an initial phase that is about interest. So we want to generate interest for our e-shop, and we want to get people to get people to submit a permission. So first of all, there's naturally an awareness phase where we need to attract online attention through social, etc. Right? And we want people to do a content upgrade or to submit a form. So once they've submitted the form, we move them into the next phase, which would be the learn phase. So maybe you haven't registered as a customer yet inside our e-shop. So we want to start communicating some what we call main interest, introducing you to our business, to the e-shop, and the fantastic products we have on stock. But maybe we just have your email and your name right now. So lower the border on how to get people to submit permissions. So we run a data harvest activation. So we want to know more about you. You're not just an email in our database. We want to be able to send relevant and personalized communication to you. Slowly but safely getting more information around the customer, like you also saw with Danske Spil just a second ago, where they have a data harvest to identify the sort of potential customer you are. Now, the whole focus of this phase is naturally to get you to register as a customer. So once you've registered as a customer, you move into the next phase. But maybe you haven't actually placed an order yet. You just registered as a customer to see what this platform is, or this eShop is actually all about. So in this case, we automatically trigger a welcome communication phase, which sends out information. Welcome to our eShop. These are the functionalities that you can be using, making sure that people get activated. And then we start to educate people on, how can you use this specific eShop? There might be a list of favorite products you can always reorder. This is where you can update the way you want to receive your invoices and all of those different things. So to get people to understand the full value of the eShop, and not just as a place where I can buy a product, because I can do that anywhere, right? And the whole purpose of this registration phase is really to get people to place the first order. So you might have seen a campaign, you logged into the eShop, but you didn't end up buying anything. So we want to get you to place the first order, which moves you into the next phase, which is the first business phase. So once you've put in the first business, well, you get your first order, you get order confirmations and those sort of things sent. We want to also monitor and make sure that the first order you purchase becomes a really good success, so we get you to come back, right? So creating a success is really about the first service. So once the order confirmation has been sent out, communications will be sent out also telling them that you can always call us to ask about statuses. This is where you can do online tracking of the goods that's been sent to you, all of those different things. And also finishing off with a success survey, asking the client whether you were happy with the service and the delivery that you've just ordered for us. It's important to understand whether you were a happy and successful client. So once you've done your first purchase, nobody can, nobody will know whether you actually come back and buy from us once again. So you move into the expansion phase, and the whole goal of this is to expand the relationship with the customers and get you to buy more from us, so we become the de facto standard from where you will be purchasing. Also want to start to introduce you to all of the other business units this IT reseller has. They sell licenses and products and services and all kinds of different stuff. And then you end up in the loyalty phase being the place where you hopefully will stay continuously, where automated upselling, cross-selling, and those things will be executed from. Last phase is the churn prevention, monitoring whether you have not logged in for the last X months or X weeks, then re-engaging you as it's been a while since you've been on our web shop. We miss you. Is there anything is there any reason for that, and those sort of different things. So running a churn prevention flow. So to give you an example of how we can take the framework and build this into a standard sort of flow for each and every one of you, for your business. So the ones that are on this webinar, maybe you only have 4 phases, maybe you have 8 phases or 9 phases, but in general, this is what people actually go through. See, we have a question here. Let me just see what that is all about. It's a bit longer question from you, Anna, so if it's okay, I'll take that in the end and just finish off the slides here. So I'm almost done. So really, to get this going, I think there's 3 main things that needs to be in place to be able to succeed with this. One is the sort of customer strategy. What is it that we actually want to communicate? Starting out with the framework that Isabel introduced everybody to, and then bringing that into actual flows, actual communications. But to be able to do that, you also need technology. So we need some technology that, from a data perspective and communication perspective, can support the nice PowerPoint slides and the flows that we will be designing along the way. But it also takes competences, and I think that's one of the major issues that we see with many marketing organizations, is that too many marketing organizations are still thinking in spray and pray and batch and blast and whatever we want to call that, not really thinking about that this is a dialogue. We talk about B2B and B2C, but in reality, it is a P2P, person-to-person communication that we're trying to do with these sort of communication flows. And we need to have that sort of concept inside our minds also and inside the marketing organizations. And right now we're planning a set of webinars in the coming year where we talk about the organizational challenges that marketing organizations are facing in this new era of communication. So those are the key three things we need to have in place to be able to really deliver on a technology-enabled contact strategy. So with that said, we see three things if we should give you a direction of how to get started with customer lifecycle communications. First of all, we need to set up and start to define sort of the full omni-channel vision. How do we want to communicate to our customers? But really identify the basics like we talked about before. Where can I generate a high level of value? Getting the basics right here. Where can I generate a high level of value with the least amount of resources? Is that the introduction flow? Is that the customer survey? Is it the registration? Is it the introduction when first time somebody submits a permission? Where does it bring the most value with the least amount of resources? And bringing that into a roadmap of flows and initiatives that will be executed. And once we have that, we will start to have actual data based on the performances, and then we can evolve from there. What should be the next big thing to set up? And I think that's really how we see most of the clients that we work with become successful. Not starting out with a wall full of post-its that we cannot really implement. Identify what can be implemented today, and then evolve from there. So I think that's more or less what we will cover today. I hope you got an okay introduction to sort of the framework from Isabel. And Isabel, once again, thank you very much for taking your time to join this webinar. I hope you also got a few insights into both how this can be implemented from a B2C perspective and also a B2B perspective, and a little bit about the process of bringing this from high-level PowerPoint into actual flows, identifying the process from phases to initial flows and to what is the easiest to implement. So with that said, open for questions, and for those of you that will be logging off or jumping out, just want to take this opportunity also to thank you for joining and wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. We will be hosting new webinars in the new year also, focusing on new and interesting topics. So I know we had a question before, which I'll just take up here. Just a second. I want to make this like that, and I can see what there is. We had a question from Anna. She says, our service is a new paradigm. Most people don't know about it. Most often we just cold call our potential customers to start with. Do you have a suggestion on how to make our sales process more efficient? Should we really avoid the stage of education? So I think it really depends on the sort of product that you are selling. But one of the earlier webinars, we actually, I'm not sure if you saw that, but we actually described and introduced the demand waterfall of SiriusDecisions also, which is really about aligning sales and marketing. And what we see in general for most of our clients is there is a huge potential of automating the very high level of the funnel, and then focusing your sales resources into the ones that are much more educated or much more ready to actually speak to the clients. And I think that can be quite a costful process of cold calling these clients from start of the funnel. But naturally, it demands that you have your option of being able to communicate to these customers. Permissions and those sort of different things. So I think the way forward for you guys is really depends first of all on the product and type of solution, the market that you're in. But to generalize a little bit, most clients that bring effectiveness really automate the high level of the funnel instead of cold calling. That might, if you speak to a sales director, then the old-fashioned sales directors will be a little bit scared by that because, number of calls equals revenue. That's the common denominator for many sales directors in the old days. And today, with the automation platforms of Eloqua, we can really personalize and automate a huge part of that process, and then just send the people that are in the market actually to the sales reps. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Anna, but or else just please retype. We also have another question from Dorte. Do you have experience with implementing customer journey nurturing flows in Microsoft Dynamics CRM? Yes and no. We have experience with integrating with MS CRM, but we've chosen to specialize ourselves in Eloqua and the Oracle Marketing Cloud. And the main reason for that is that once you start engaging in customer life cycles and communications in different channels, etc., you will find that you really need both a partner and also a technology that can take you all the way. Because many of the CRM platforms, also MS CRM, they bought a marketing platform some years ago and has integrated that into MS CRM, which has functionalities, but also have a lot of limits regards to data. So I think for you guys, I would start out by defining the flow, if you have that, and then identifying what data do we actually need, and have that as the starting point for evaluating what technology would be the right for you guys to use. Because you're also asking about click dimensions, which I also know quite well. And I think my answer, we don't work with the click dimensions ourselves, but I think my answer would be the same. Start out by creating and breaking down the customer lifecycle. What is it that you actually want to be able to communicate? And then afterwards choose the technology. So the first part of that, we can definitely support you in that, defining the process, defining the flows, defining the data that is needed. And then you should consider the options you have from a technology perspective. Because if it becomes a technology decision, then you end up either with something that is too big or too small, or maybe you may end up with something that is right for you. So we've specialized ourselves in the Oracle Marketing Cloud, but I think, Dorte, if you want to have a dialogue on how you could build the customer lifecycle, feel free to reach out to either me or one of my teammates, and we can show you how that could be addressed, and yeah, we could go about that. Okay. Any other questions? Then feel free to fire away. We also have Isabel on the line still, if anybody has questions for her. Thank you, Ulf, and Merry Christmas to you too. We have a question from Christian here. Creating content, do the clients do that themselves in-house with you or a third-party agency? That's actually a really good question, and I don't think there's a one set of answers. So we have clients that has in-house competences, copywriters that can write the content themselves, but usually we end up with defining flow number 2.1, we have 3 touch points. This should be the overall message. Now, delivering the pictures and the actual copywriting, that's sometimes we deliver that through a third party, taking the full responsibility. Other times, customers have internal resources, as I mentioned before, and we also have examples. Actually, the example of the B2B flow I showed you before, that's actually with a third-party agency. But it usually starts out with us, with the customer, defining the overall flow, defining the processes, identifying what data is needed, and then we start with describing, writing the content that is needed for each of the different flows. So I think it's a little bit of everything. Yeah. Another question or comment from Eric here. My experience is that you need all of the content, but that you find that the prospects may consume the content in different orders, even if you send that you have outlined. Yes, I completely agree, Eric. That's the funny thing about it's the funny thing about customers. We can't really determine what they should be doing. So when we define the flows, now when I introduced the flows to you guys before, we took it kind of a linear flow, straight line, but often customers jump into different parts of the flows, and that's sort of defined in the segments and the triggers usually. So I completely agree with you on that, Eric. Also have a question from Sarah here. Is the process of customer lifecycle different when you sell innovative technology? It depends on what you mean. If the process of defining the customer lifecycle, or do you mean the process of the actual customer lifecycle? the process of defining it is more or less the same. You know, from starting point to the end point. I would say it's the same. You know, Sarah, I think the process of the actual life cycle, I think it's very different. You might have the overall phases, which could be the same, but in general, it's something that we customize for every single client. You know, we can't take an out of the box and you know, framework, fill out these forms, and then we have a customer life cycle, because it's really about knowing the moment of truth, and that's specific for each and every client. So in general, I think we have the same phases, but you know, from what needs to be communicated in each of the different phases, I think that's often very different, because maybe you have you know, specific part of your business you want to focus on. Maybe another customer has another part of the business. Maybe the, you know, big value for you guys or in the start of the funnel. Maybe for somebody else it's in the end of the funnel. So it is really up to every single every single client to have that defined. And we've done quite a number of these over the years, and I think from experience, the key phases are more or less the same, as also Isabel mentioned in her presentation. But the elements, the tactical elements, is very, very different from customer to customer. I'm not sure if that.
This is Isabel. I mean, I would certainly agree with that. The buying cycle that I presented at the very beginning was something that SiriusDecisions created after quite a lot of research with different clients in multiple different markets, and it's really more fundamentally based on the psychology of how prospects go about buying. And there's more information behind it with regards to the different persona roles that are involved in any buying decision, which can range from just one individual to multiple individuals. But the actual three phases, would absolutely agree with you. Those are sort of a psychological buying process. What can change, exactly to your point, perhaps the number of people that are involved in that buying decision can change. So it could be that it's just one individual to two individual. We call that a fairly independent buying process. Or it could be a consensus, or the most complicated is a committee type of buying approach, where you're really sort of bringing together, you know, maybe 5 or 6 different buying groups to try and get agreement on commitment to make a purchasing decision. So that's one aspect that can change. The other aspect that typically changes is again, as you were saying, Lasse, it's the actual type of offer and the delivery mechanism that you're choosing, because different industries and for different solutions, people will go to different places in order to inform themselves. And so they'll be wanting to consume different types of information, and they'll be wanting to consume it in different formats as well. So what we typically recommend there is that you really try and understand the different you know, key stakeholders within each buying process for each particular either technology type or industry, and then, you know, understand enough about them, what their pain points are for the messaging, as well as what their preferences are. How do they like to consume content? Where do they like to go for that content? And those are the things that we typically see will flex based on the type of buying process. In other words, whether it's an independent or that really complicated committee one, and then which industry it is. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Thank you very much, Isabel. All right, any other questions or comments? Just fire away. Does not seem like it. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you also, Isabel, for taking your time once again for this webinar. I appreciate you guys being on this. I hope we can see more of you guys also next year. And to all of our viewers, thank you very much for a fantastic 2015. I hope to see you all back in 16 on our next series of webinars. If you have specific topics you would find interesting to hear about, feel free to write me directly. We have a ton of different experts, both in our own company and related you know, partners, etc. So we could bring in different sorts of people to speak on these webinars also. And so with that said, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year when you get to it. And yeah, take care, and I'll see you on the other side.